Before today's podcast, we want to take a moment to acknowledge Cal Wilson, who was a host of the Great Australian Bake Off and who died unexpectedly today.
Cal was a superstar of the Australasian comedy scene and was widely regarded in the entertainment industry as one of the most genuinely warm and funny people that you could ever hope to meet. And that's something which, in our brief interactions, I can confirm that's exactly who Cal was.
As fans of Cal Wilson for many years, it's something, it was beautiful to see her join something else that we love. You know me, I love when two things I love come together, and having her as part of the Bake Off family, even for such a brief time, was so special. We know that filming only wrapped up a couple of weeks ago for the next season, so we will still get to see her again on screens, but it's going to be it's going to be tough. Yeah. So
the Washing Up podcast extends obviously our deepest sympathies to all of Cal's friends and of course her family at what is a very difficult time.
There's no real easy way to segue
into what we do.
Into what we do.
Although we know she'd appreciate it.
She would definitely appreciate it, and I'm sure it would involve a lot of props, potentially goggles, liquid nitrogen, and a lot of science.
I can say for a fact there is that science reference in this podcast. So
yeah,
kind of in honour of Cal. So with that, off to the podcast. My name's Chris.
And I'm Kristie.
This is the Washing Up Podcast, and it's Bread Week.
It certainly is. It ain't no pain.
Oh, that's a horrible pun.
Sorry, I started on a crummy note.
Oh, don't. I had bread puns on the drinking game this week.
Oh, don't be crusty.
Oh no, it's going again. So hang on, I'll quickly go through the game card before we get anywhere near the episode.
Fine.
Anyone
who's listening to this is still recovering from their hangover, I'm sure.
Interestingly enough,
yes.
What I did was I was very specific.
Yes, you were.
I said rise to the challenge pun.
Yes, I think that's good. I think we need to be less generic with this kind of stuff.
Less generic drunkenness and more specific drunkenness.
Because then I throw in something that just fucks with everyone.
Exactly. Our bread was called vegan or vegetarian, even though yeast are being sacrificed. Now, that was less of a point about the bakers.
And more about my strong beliefs that if you're going to declare yourself to be a vegan and that you don't harm animals, like, where does it end?
It's got to be unyeasted dough.
Exactly.
Otherwise, the little yeast are just, help me.
But then, don't get me started on the microbes that are being killed every moment.
Got to be a level 7 vegan. You don't need anything that casts a shadow. Anyway, Baker has made the technical before. Now, I did this before I knew what the technical was, and no. A bake is underproofed. Yeah, they didn't specifically say it, but there are a couple that you could say they did say that the dough wasn't quite kneaded properly. So the flavour combination is described as unusual. There were a couple of times that happened, although none of them were unusual and ended up being bad.
But we've got to be specific, remember? Like we've put it down. Let's not... Okay, if you want to get drunk, just interpret this as much as you want.
Well, the reason why I did that one... Look, I was very specific on the pun. But I was very open on the unusual flavours.
Okay.
I
but
balanced
there's nothing out there. Like, no one's going, put in dried grasshopper and bubblegum flavouring.
But like, for example, the mango and duck combo was one that Kyla said was unusual to her.
Yeah, that's true.
There are a couple of others that were a little bit... Again, Kyla not so much as that, but a textural one she said was the chili and the cornbread. Because she's like, it's going to be runny and wet, which it wasn't. We'll come back to that.
There was no soggy bottoms there.
Someone taps the base of their bread to check that it's ready. There was no traditional bread as such in terms of the French-style bread that you tap the base of in this episode.
It was... cornbread, you don't have to tap a base.
There's no point.
There's no point.
Wait, if you're tapping your cornbread, you've screwed up somewhere.
What else? I mean, maybe with the Mexican one, but then all the toppings would fall off.
Yeah, or what of the quince paste? What of the quince paste?
Maggie B would faint in horror.
I wonder what Maggie Bear would think of their use of quince.
She probably donated it. She probably sent it across.
It's from the quince room.
Yeah. She's like, we've got extra quints after a small mishap.
Anne and Alan forage leftovers. Again, not in this episode.
They're not the ones foraging. It's all Heather and her mob.
Exactly. We'll come to that. Now, the middle square. Oh, this is my week. Now, they did sort of lull Candace into a version of it. Mm-hmm. And, like, immediately went, aha, we got you. They sort of got her to say, this is my week. Sort of. It wasn't quite, but it was
more
so
like
you should
she's
do really well.
comfortable,
You should do really well at this one. Yeah, I feel like I should do pretty well. Aha!
Gotcha.
Now, the middle
That's some
square...
gotcha tactics right there.
Yeah, but they owned up to it fast as well, because they're Canadian. They're too nice. But the middle square on the drinking game is always matcha.
It usually is.
Now, this week, I went bread week. It's the one week I'm going to give it a rest.
Yes.
Kathy, we need to talk a bit later, because matcha appeared. We'll get there, don't panic. But the middle square this week was also used, though. And the middle square was a used suggestion this week.
It was.
And it was inspired.
Well, I thought, let's get people hammered or on a sugar high or eating their cheesels or whatever the bloody Canadian equivalent is. I presume it's choozles.
Whatsits.
Whatsits.
So, no, that's
Really?
British. That's the British equivalent of Whatsits. Okay, so, close up...
And it would be Hoosier-its.
Close up of flour being scooped from a Robin Hood bag.
I was more specific as
you
well.
were,
but
it didn't fit in the square. The more specific was from a...
perfectly folded,
framed
bag of Robin Hood
flour.
Oh, wow.
And sure enough, when we got to the showstopper, absolutely perfect bag of flour. It's like someone ironed it.
Yeah, I like to think that there's a Robin Hood stylist on set.
Their whole job. I'd like to think they wear nothing but Lincoln green.
Yeah, they're like the stylist who goes with a celebrity to the red carpet.
They follow the flower around.
And it's like primps them and fluffs them and all that kind of stuff as they go to take the shot, like the photo. So, you know, before when that guy with the the 3D camera that zooms around in slow mo.
That weird thing that happens at every award show now, where they stand there and a guy runs around them with a camera.
Yeah, there's this guy and he has it on like a swing arm.
Yeah, no,
thing.
it's weird.
And you can just see some celebrities like, I got this, and other celebrities like, you want me to what now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got a romantic...
What would you do?
Oh, God.
Pick your nose? That'd be funny in slow motion. Flick a booger.
Yeah. Have the camera chase it.
Right onto the lens. Sorry.
Surely you have to moon it. Surely you have to moon in 3D. Anyway, a romantic bread introduction is what we got. Alan and the bread, and then Anne and the French stick.
Look, okay, Alan and Anne, next year. I've got your opening signed up. So you've done romance this year. Great. Let's go with comedy and another emotion. Violence. I think...
Another emotion. Violence.
Well, it's not really anger. So what I'm thinking is Alan sitting there just minding his own business and staring lovingly at a bit of bread. And then what Anne should have done is walked up and she's like, oh, Alan, you've got something on your face. He's like, what? Then she picks up the bread, smacks him in it. She goes, it was pain.
ASDF movie, anybody? ASDF movie, anybody? It's right up. It's right up there with, you know. There's the.
I like trains.
I want an ASDF baking episode, bake-off episode.
I am a stegosaurus.
When they cut into the cake, and it's, oh my god!
And you know what they can
and the
bake?
muffins, mommy.
But then they couldn't bake muffins, and whoever creates 10 perfect muffins has muffin time.
Anyway, let's get into the episode now. The other bit of good news.
Oh, that's right. We're going to talk about the episode.
The other good news about this episode: not a hint of dead dough. Not one. Now, last year we had a bit of a complaint about the fact that dead dough appeared quite frequently.
Yep.
In Australian last season, dead dough appeared quite frequently.
I mean, it is one of those things where you have to choose what will be dead, the yeast or the dough.
Exactly. But it's really, I'm
glad we just killed yeast.
Yeah, we don't like an over-reliance on dead dough to make up a majority of a bake because, you know, one of the rules that's always been sort of laid out by judges is that you should be able to eat whatever's in front of them, right?
Yeah.
And when you've got
and like you can eat it, it's just not pleasant.
And when you've got a bake that's largely made of dead dough, we've seen it a few times in different versions of Bake Off where there's lots of dead dough carrying a majority of the bake, it kind of feels like then that it's not as even a playing field because you're not testing based on quantity of tasty bakes.
No, this would be the equivalent of if in Cake Week you allowed a lot more Rice Krispie squares.
Yeah, if you let them go Cake Boss.
Yeah, and styrofoam fake layers.
Yeah,
and
we want you to do a lovely
dowel.
we want you to do an amazing decorated cake, and you're allowed to use as much Rice Krispie and fondant as you want.
Yeah, and
just a vanilla cake inside.
Yeah, like, just random sheet cake that you've...
So well done on avoiding bakes that need a dead dough. Really love that.
Kill that yeast.
As Niv...
So cornbread, that didn't need the yeast.
Well, let's get into it, because as Niv said, I'm ready for this. So, you're ready for this? So the signature was cornbread. Now you had to include your own signature flavours and flair. Why did they not call it whimsy?
Because
include your whimsy.
I'm assuming that like the whimsy, it would just invoke too much whimsy into the shed. They can hint at the whimsy, but if you state the whimsy, too much whimsy.
Well, you could have in the chili, for example.
Whimsy.
In Camilla's chili, for example.
And I'm calling it whimsy.
For Camilla's chili, for example, when she used invoked the whimsy.
Yeah.
She could have made it out of bison.
Well, I'm sure
Jude would have had a supply.
Yeah. She's like, I'll hook you up. She could have gone with the whole Canadian chili. So bison, the lobster from PEI, those berries that aren't Saskatoon.
We're not going to talk about that. So you also had to have a homemade condiment. I would have just made an entire vat of chili.
Yeah.
That's a condiment.
If you put it in a little tub and serve it
exactly.
on the side, it's a condiment.
What is it? It's condiment chili. Now Heather, I think, sums up a lot of people's views on Bake Off that they never want to say out loud. When she said every week is terrifying, there's always a new flavour of fear. Yeah.
I now want to do a cornbread with pepperberry. Like pepperberry is an Australian ingredient. Native Australian ingredient.
I think pepperberry would be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, because it's got that same kind of juicy spiciness as jalapenos.
You could also do an aniseed myrtle and it would work quite well too.
You could, yeah.
So some Australian spices would work quite well. I've actually been investigating for a few people in Canada about getting some Australian spices sent over there to give them a bit more experience at using Australian spices.
Yeah.
So I found a supplier. So we're working on that for a few people. So bakers, if you're interested, let me know. Anyway,
back at the ranch. Sorry, yeah. I do digress.
Yeah, like talked about his reputation of being zippy will pay off.
Did you, da?
Now, you have a reputation for being zippy?
How do you get a reputation for being zippy?
How do you,
does he wear a lot of outfits with zips on them?
How do you walk around...
like Briar Rabbit?
When was the last time you walked around and looked at somebody and went, you know what they are? They're zippy.
Yeah, because he's there and there's like two people threatening to roast him and he's like, oh no, don't chuck me in the bramble bush. You're really not really getting my really old cartoon reference, are you?
Brer Rabbit and then some. Oh wow. Let's invoke the spirit of the American South during a really troublesome time.
I know.
It's true. Like that's the zip that everyone seems to know. Zippity doodah,
yeah.
Which is such a lovely song to sing, given the contextual evidence of everything else in that. Anyway, Kyla then warns about taking away from making good cornbread by adding in too much flavour, and that is possibly something that one individual needed to hear early.
Look, Sydney, one day you'll sit down and watch one of the movies or documentaries about Chanel and you'll learn that, you put it on and then you take one thing off and then you're ready to go.
One of these days as well, you need to watch old series of the Great British Bake Off.
Oh, yes.
And you need to meet Flora.
Oh, yeah. If you thought you put too much in that cornbread,
Flora would have made macarons to go with.
Yeah. Flora wouldn't have just made cornbread. She would have got every vegetable in the garden and made a bread for it.
Yes, exactly. She would have made a cornbread. She would have also made a zucchini bread, a carrot bread. She would have
purple cornbread.
Yeah, exactly. Just because
rainbow cornbread
for diversity.
Yeah.
Okay. Heather. Look, Heather had a really interesting episode. So. Last week, you suggested that Heather might be raising her children for the apocalypse.
Absolutely.
And what she talked about in this episode just continued to prove that she's definitely raising people for the apocalypse.
Yeah.
But
it's going to be like a cottage apocalypse.
But here's the problem. the apocalypse can't invoke anything that's spicy food. Because, as Heather said, her mouth is very European.
Yeah.
So she can only handle a tiny bit of heat.
So I now think that Heather is just relegating herself to zombie bait so her children can get away.
Exactly. So
She'll sacrifice herself and her weak taste buds.
well, speaking of weak taste buds, pumpkin puree, fine. Smoky cheese,
Great.
fine. Pea puree. Now,
Look, great job raising your children to get with the apocalypse, but peas?
yeah,
Peas.
look, Pea's made several appearances tonight. I'm starting to
Peas?
wonder if Big P isn't interfering in the show.
Look, no one wants Big P in their life.
No one needs Big P, or some people do, but they're a very special group of people. Now, there's more talk of foraging, and she talks about foraging, and she also she brings in nasturtium flowers.
Oh, they're delicious, though.
Yeah,
I do like a good nasturtium.
Yeah, I am not surprised.
You're not surprised?
Not in the slightest.
It's a peppery flower. What's not to love?
Then we cut away to what I can only consider to be another view of what the apocalypse might look like. Mm-hmm. And it was three gentlemen being fit under a bridge in Laval. Followed, after hanging out under the bridge in Laval and being fit,
Yeah.
and it looks like a really seedy sort of environment. It looks like a gentrified, seedy environment. It was clean. Then, obviously, one of them goes to his car, reaches into the boot, comes back and goes, yo, my brothers. Want some bakes? And offers them food. It's literally like Canadian gang warfare involves some push-ups under a bridge and then some baked goods.
This is no CSI New York,
CSI Laval's a very different thing.
It's very different. The police rock up, they go, what you got there in your box? Oh no, officer. No, please don't search me. Or you'll get this delicious cake.
Oh, wow. Bear claw. So, baked goods under the overpass was lovely. Now Rania was talking about...
That sounds like a romance novel.
Baked goods under the overpass. It's going to be the name of the show that was happening with Alan and Anne at the start. Welcome back to Baked Goods Under the Overpass. So, Rania was talking about the fact that he doesn't normally like technology. It doesn't work for him. But this olive pitter seemed to be, oh no, wait, it's not working anymore.
Look, the underpasses are very simple places. There's not a lot of tech. It's all manual gyms. There's none of this fancy stuff like running machiney thingies.
So
There's none of your heart rate monitors.
So he was going olive and herb with a fig and feta dip.
He can take those olive pitters back to the boys at the underpass and go, this will work here. Our olives will be pitted.
Now, I also like the fact that you get olive and herb with a fig and feta dip. So I'm assuming, again, the figs, were a Maggie Beer trade as well. She sent those over.
She just popped over it. Nerman gave her a lift over in his hot air balloon.
Then Kathy made
Around the world in 80 bakes.
Then Kathy made a statement, and I don't know how you'd quantify it. I'd like to know what the data is. Alberta bees are the hardest working bees. Are they unionised? Is that it? Are Alberta bees unionised? I need to know.
Or are your gardeners just pricks? Just literally, planting flowers, at least 2 kilometres away from beehives.
Do they put a flower at the end of a little treadmill?
Yes.
Or a wind tunnel. So the bee has to fly into the wind tunnel and has to fly doubly hard to get to the flower.
Yes. Wind tunnel maze.
But see, all I can think of now is each of those bees trying to go up the wind tunnel. All I can think of, if you put the right lighting on it, it's Jamiroquai virtual insanity. Because, with the floors moving under it. Yeah, the bee's, flying and, keeps going backwards because the wind is moving him.
Do you think this is propagated by Heather, who's trying to create apocalypse-ready bees?
Heather is just trading everything for the apocalypse. Yeah. Bees, bakers, children, Battlestar Galactica.
Underpasses, she's coming for you.
But I would like to know, Kathy, if you've got quantifiable data that demonstrates that Alberta bees are the hardest working bees. So
I like Australian native bees, who are just the cutest bees.
They are. They're
little blue bees. They're so cute.
Australian native bees are the dopes of the bee world. They just buzz around.
Yeah. Or if you go see the Tasmanian bumblebees, oh my god, like they put the bumble in the bum.
They put the bumble in the bum.
In the bumble.
So Niv was then going with a Persian style of cornmeal. Mm-hmm. And so she had her saffron chicken.
Yes.
And the mustard which is the cucumber yogurt dip thing, which she was going with.
I'm now saying this in Nandor's voice from the shows. It's from Al Canada.
Thank you very much for the tiny saffron chicken.
Yes.
So was with the Mirasol peppers, and more importantly, it was all about the beer cheese sauce.
Yeah, isn't that fondue? Is that
basically? It's
a great idea.
It's like fondue, yeah, because fondue's beer or wine. So beer cheese sauce is just basically fondue, but you're not warming it in a little pot. You're just pouring it over things.
Love it.
Or piping it if it gets a bit more solid.
Yum. Cheese sauce bum, as my mum might say. No, I know. I'm just going. We really do need someone to come in and just edit all my random shit out.
No, we don't. I've done that before. It takes a while. So
we don't have that kind of money.
Now,
if you want someone to come in and edit all my random shit out, just like. We don't even have a Patreon, do we?
We do. We have a Ko-Fi. We have a Ko-Fi. It's on our. It's on our Twitter. It's on our. All of our links. If you go to the top of our Twitter, it's there. If you go to the top of our Instagram, the links are there.
If you want professional level podcasting,
if you pay us, I can edit this stuff. Yes. This stuff. Anyway, Andrew. Now, Andrew was very much you at this point because Andrew was the baking uncle.
Oh, he was.
And what I mean was, he just put a bunch of cakes in front of the children with a bunch of toppings and just said, sure, throw everything at the cake.
Yeah.
And it's like, they've got these things and it's like, I like the way whenever people do this, they lay it out like the children are going to grab a handful of this and a handful of this.
Fuck no.
And what you just saw was they just picked up all the bowls and they're just like, tip.
Dump. I mean, I believe I've told it probably on an Australian podcast when I, baked the congratulations to my niece cake with my nephew, and it was going to be a surprise cake where we hidden like lollies inside the middle of the cake, and so when you cut it open, out it pours. But as soon as she walked through the door, he's like, oh, come, we've got cake, there's a surprise in it. It's lollies. 4-year-old keeping
Look, for a 4-year-old, that is a very long time to manage to keep a secret. That's a really long time.
That's 5 steps of her walking through the door.
She got inside. So he was making a bacon and chive cream cheese and crispy jalapenos.
Oh, yeah.
And it was an ode to his husband, Mark. It's all of his husband, Mark's favourite flavours. So as they said, well, if it doesn't work, you can blame Mark. But when it worked, Mark got all the credit.
I'm glad to see that. Like, if he agreed that Mark was going to get the blame, I'm glad that all his hard work also went to Mark getting the credit.
Oh, exactly. So then we cut over to Sydney. Now Sydney at this point in time was channeling a legend. Yes. Sydney was channeling James. So the goggles were on. Mm-hmm. So she's channeling James while she puts the goggles
Chopping
on.
Onions.
Yeah. So Sydney was going with a PEI cheddar, a scallop ceviche, and lime butter.
And then about 600 other ingredients.
Yeah, and there was, when we talk about the idea of the PEI cheddar and the scallop ceviche and the lime butter, there was also corn, and there were a bunch of other vegetables, and there was a ton of other flavours going on. I mean, like...
This wasn't cornbread, this was corn dinner.
Yeah.
This was a corn buffet.
Course.
A corn course.
This was corn courses. It was like 4 courses in one. And there was... Look, I was concerned when she was talking about how much was in there, because I'm like, that feels like something's going to go missing. Mm-hmm. Also, with the lime butter, just feels like, why? Not because you don't want a lime butter, but because you've got the cheddar and the scallop ceviche, which is already soaked in lime, and you've got corn, and you've got cornbread. I am just like, the lime butter's gone at this point.
Look, I really feel for Sydney in this point, because you could see that she was thinking about flavours, but not
too many.
Too many flavours. But
if you want to edit Sydney's brain about flavours, contact her Patreon and get someone to edit it.
I feel like she might. I feel like she might have called me up, because I'm a consummate enabler. She would have gone, "Hey, Kristie, should I add corn? Yeah, of course you should add corn. What about this? Yeah, you got to be adding that, Sydney." She's like, "Are you sure? oh yeah, just add it all. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. She's like, I think it's going to get lost. The cornbread's going to get lost in it. No.
Yeah, I'll be doing one of our improv sort of dinners where I'm like, I'm going to make this, and I'm sort of going, I'm going to add, and you're like, oh, you know what else you could add?
Yeah.
It's the number one phrase. I'll start cooking, and I'll grab a bunch of ingredients. And Chris, oh, you know what else we've got? Oh, you know what else we've got? And I'm like, yeah, I've got 7 things. Oh, but you know what else we've got?
Yeah, but when are my ideas bad?
Mostly good.
Okay, let's not go into my bad
Mostly really good.
Yeah,
occasionally.
But it's more along the lines of when you go, oh, maybe I'll do this, and I'll do this. Maybe I should just do it. I'm like, why not both? I feel like Sydney hung out with me and the taco girl and the old El Paso child.
Yes. So I also want, at this point they cut back to Niv saffron chicken, and I really just want the recipe. I also really want the recipe for Camilla's chili. Now Camilla was doing Swiss cheese, canned corn, and a chili base, which is genius. Like, you serve cornbread with chili, so why not put the chili as the base of the cornbread?
Are you telling me this is a new chili, a way to kind of like convey chili?
It's a chili delivery service, yes.
Like in a more effective manner.
Yes, it's an effective chili delivery service. But what I liked about that was Kyla going, that's going to be wet. And Camilla's like, no, it's a really dry chili.
Yeah.
And Kyla's response was, still really worried. It worked though.
But obviously, and this is what the beauty of a signature like this is. You've got your basic recipe there, cornbread. And then everyone's challenge is to, one, add their own spin, which means that you have to add your flavors, which also means you have to consider your ingredients and how those ingredients are going to impact the recipe that you're dealing with.
Exactly.
And how you're going to adjust that.
And that's the skill of it. So now we want a brief cutaway to Niv preparing barberries, which I just feel are a gateway drug and should not be incorporated because barberries are a gateway to Saskies.
Yeah, but Saskies don't exist, so at least barberries exist.
Yeah, well, barberries exist, but I feel like they use barberries as your gateway because once you accept that barberries are real, it's like flat earthers. Once you accept one part of their stupid theory, suddenly they believe that you have to believe the earth is flat. There's no other option.
It's the cooker slippery slide.
It is very much the cooker slippery slide.
If you don't know what a cooker is, look up Canberra cookers.
It's fantastic.
Enjoy.
Yeah. Now, Candace was then frying chicken skins. I am a bandit for a good fried chicken skin. I love crispy chicken skin.
At this point, Candace could have just ignored everything else she served up, just put up the chicken skins, not even show the cornbread. And I think Bruno and Kyla would be in the right, so just go, you win.
Then she did a honey butter though.
This technical bake? No. Oh, sorry,
everything.
This signature bake? No.
Have a cake plate. Have a cake plate.
You win life.
Honey butter and a pepper chili.
You want last year's?
And a pepper chili glaze.
Serena's? We'll go still hers.
Go all the way back. Yeah. A pepper chili glaze as well. Now this is where they goaded her into saying she feels confident. You said it!
Yeah, but they've probably got their own bingo card of what they've got to try and hit around the shed.
Well, we'll talk about that a bit later too. Then we cut to Kathy. Because Kathy was in the battle of this making fried pork skins. So we got chicharron, candy jalapeno, and cojita butter. So really, the candy jalapenos look really nice too.
Oh, I just want to go in there and pretend I'm a host and just hoover everything up.
Then we come back to Locke, who's using.
I could dress up like a bake-off god. Bring me offerings.
We'll come back to them because the bake-off gods were summoned again.
They were.
They're summoning the bake-off gods a lot. So Locke's using his own beer for his beer cheese sauce.
Yes.
Whereas Andrew was taking up that science mantle. He made his own cream cheese.
He did. Lovely work.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Not enough goggles. It needed to borrow Sydney's.
Yes.
Then Heather. Now Heather said that putting the pea puree made it look good. Lies.
Look,
Lies, Heather.
Stick to your lane. Apocalypse prepping.
Yeah.
Go for it. Prep away. Back away from the peas. The peas are not going to make the apocalypse.
And then we got Candace and Heather both rushing over to help Sydney.
One, because I will cause the apocalypse just to get rid of
rid of the peas, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, Candace and Heather then rushed over at the very end to help Sydney.
Who do you think is goading capitalists into destroying the environment as quickly as they are? Just me and my hatred of peas.
Whole reason for destroying the environment. This whole thing is just a large scam. All right, the judging. So Candace, they said it had a bit of a prism effect on top of it, which looked really cool. And the jalapeno jelly glaze was lovely.
Glad it was a prism effect and not a prison effect.
Different thing. They said that she nailed it. Rania, they said, played with the monochromatic colours very well. Mm-hmm. It was very nice, but it needed longer in the oven. Yeah. Heather, it looks pretty. They said it worked well if you'd put more pea puree in there. Wrong, Bruno.
It's
wrong. Don't encourage this.
Bruno.
The bread, however, was a bit dry.
He's in the pocket of Big P. It's
gotta be. Gotta be. Well, I mean, they've both got to be, because later on, Kyla says that the peas really pop.
Do you think Rainier's was a little underdone because he got a bit too carried away with just pitting olives? Like, he'd pitted all the olives he needed.
It's amazing. They're like, dude, you got to cook your... I don't care. I've got a family who love olives.
We're pitting away.
Sydney's, they said, was playful. Mm-hmm. The corn was enough. And there were too many parts to enjoy any single one of them.
Yeah.
Like they said, was very lush and rich. The flavours were great, but the bread was slightly under.
I believe you'll call him Zippy from now on.
Yes, Zippy. Sorry, my
bad.
My
sister's horse is called Zip. You want to come over? Hey, Zippy, come over ride my sister's horse, Zip.
He did say last week that after the podcast that he was proud of us and he would visit Australia. And it's like,
there we go. We're lining up. Zippy ride Zip.
Zippy ride Zip.
Yeah.
So then we go to Camilla, which was clean and consistent, beautiful texture, cooked beautifully. They said her whole one was a meal on its own, with the chili at the bottom and the cornbread at the top.
Apparently Zip was a prick on the weekend, though. Just headbutted my sister. Just thought I'd share that on the podcast.
Zippy, have you ever headbutted anyone? Anyway, moving on. Andrew, they said they loved the herbs. The flavours were quite good, but the cheese that he made, they said if you made your own cheese, it needs to be a little bit softer so you can spread it. Nibs, they said, looked beautiful, that it elevated cornbread. The top needed a bit more cooking, but the whole thing was delicious. Kathy, the texture on top was very good. It needed the jalapenos all the way through it. They said, concept is great, execution. At this point, Kathy summoned the baking gods and said that they need to help her out. I'm like, well, it's the second time in 2 weeks we've had baking gods summoned by a contestant.
Oof. There's going to be little shrines popping up all over the place.
There's a toll to be paid on the baking gods at some point. So the technical.
Yes.
The technical is the Rosca de Reyes. Or a Three Kings bread. Now, it's usually done to mark the end of the 12 days of Christmas. Mm-hmm. It's a crown with gems on it in design, and it is Mexican.
I'm just disappointed you don't have to make 3 crowns, because there are 3 kings. Like, are these kings just fighting over the one crown? Is that why they'll go to Jesus? They're like, look, like, okay, he is the Son of God, but really, we've only got one crown. Who gets to wear it? How do we work this out?
Look, can we just say you are the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? And, like, we've only got one, dude, so can we just...
They get there...
Can we save time on just one crown, and you can do all 3?
And they get there, and they go, Jesus, what are we going to do? He goes, I'm going to break this crown into thirds, and you can all have a bit. And they're like, don't you try to King Solomon us. We're aware of this trick, Jesus.
I'm going to break this crown into 3 parts. And someone at the back's going, he's going to sell the gold for scrap. Loaves and fishes don't pay for themselves.
No.
Anyway.
His parents have a tax bill to pay.
He needs wood. He's a carpenter. Anyway.
He's got dragons to wrestle. Oh wait, no,
that's early Jesus.
That's early Jesus.
That's the bits. That's legitimately the bits of the Bible that were edited out.
If I'd have known the Bible, like, okay, it's like the Bible should put the dragons back in. If they're finding congregations.
By the way, for anyone listening at home, the initial parts of the Bible included young Jesus meeting dragons out of a cave that were amazed with him and retired.
Yes.
So, read that as dragons or read that as most people do as a lizard. So, anyway, Rania. Now, Rania hadn't heard of this.
Come to church this Sunday. Roll for initiative. It's Jesus and dragons.
Anyway. So Rania's never heard of the bake, which reflected the rest of the pavilion at this point in time.
Little drummer boy is the bard.
We're not going to have a Jesus D&D campaign.
Yes,
although for a start, it's a large campaign.
It's a bloody large.
You've got all of the disciples.
That's a big party. Like, that is a raid.
Imagine how much the campaign changes depending on Judas's role. Just think about this for a minute. The way that the campaign hinges on what Judas rolls there, and does he get enough? Does he get enough silver?
The whale turns into a gelatinous blob that absorbs Judas.
Look, Jonah's inside the whale. Jonah's into the whale. Jonah rolls. Oh, you haven't got enough strength, Jonah. Unfortunately, you're digested. You die.
That's not how it goes. No, it didn't before. It does now.
All right, Jesus, roll for initiative. You shake off the cross and run into the desert. The whole story changes. What a campaign. Anyway.
He only rolls 20s. It's like, Jesus, stop using your powers.
Just once, can you roll normally?
How did you roll a 60? It's not possible.
20 is the max. Anyway, let's move on before anyone thinks we're completely blasphemous. So the bake itself is an enriched dough with a cookie dough, two different types, a white chocolate and a chocolate cookie dough. Mm-hmm. And then quince paste, but not as you know it.
No.
In like strips.
It's more like a quince fruit roll-up.
It does look like a roll-up. Or, fruit by the foot, I believe, in North America they've got those. They think they've got roll-ups too, but yeah.
Fruit by the foot is when you drop your apple halfway through eating. You're like, oh, that was a good apple.
Now it's by my foot.
It wasn't powdery.
And also then candied fruit.
Crisp and sweet.
Also then candied fruit on top. So
I love a good glacé cherry.
There's large elements of the 70s and 80s on this bake. As a bake,
yeah.
When when you get the image in your head when they're talking about the bake, and then they reveal it.
Yeah.
It's not how I pictured it.
What did you more have in
mind?
mind?
It looked far more rustic than I thought it would.
I saw it as one of those kind of celebration cakes that could be made by anyone's family.
You know what I thought the weirdest part of this was?
What?
The cookie dough strips.
Yeah?
I thought they were just weird. Because you've got bread, but then you've got random strips of cookie dough over the top of it.
Yeah.
They didn't fit for me in my head. Like, they were the bit I couldn't compute. I computed the quince paste perfectly well.
Yeah.
And a glacé cherry, of course. And a candied orange. For some reason, the cookie dough strips just felt weird. Like, we got a bit of leftover cookie dough.
It does feel like a bit of a platypus bake, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Got a bunch of leftover bits. What are we going to do with this?
All right. This is the first new category we're having. Platypus bakes.
Platypus bakes, exactly.
Yeah.
So Camilla then gave one of my favourite statements in the history of Bake Off. Now, they're looking for a perfect bread that isn't underbaked or overbaked or underproofed or overproofed.
Are they wombling free?
Wisdom.
Yeah, that was the original lyrics for Katy Perry's.
Underbaked, overbaked, wombling free. Now,
it's proofed and it's not proofed.
There was no instruction
baked,
on
overbaked.
There was no instruction on how much orange zest. It just said orange zest finely grated. To which Kathy went, "I'm going for this. I want it to be orange."
Yep.
And then we got the question about roll the dough until it becomes a shaggy dough.
It's when you roll it and suddenly goes, Mr. Lover Lover.
I was going to say, there are two ways this could go.
It wasn't me.
A shaggy dough could either go, Zoinks! Or it wasn't me and be Mr. Lover Lover.
Considering the look of the bake, though, I think it would be Zoinks.
I think it'd be
Zoinks.
Zoinks.
70s.
I think it'd be Zoinks 100%.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Scoob! But what do you do with the shaggy dough? And it's like, well, apparently get it high and send it with its friends in a van to solve mysteries. Or have it try to convince their girlfriend that it wasn't them cheating while they're watching them. Either or is apparently the answer. Now, Andrew felt like he was a cat with all of the kneading that he was doing, but I'd like to point out that Biscuit Week is next week. So making biscuits is next week, dude.
Which is funny because I get that the making biscuits thing. Like, we think biscuits of, like, cookies.
Yes.
But the North American biscuits are the
closer
scone-y,
to a scone, yeah.
The scone-y, crumpety.
Yeah. Scone crumpeties.
The scone crumpeties.
The scone crumpeties. That's where we're going to settle now?
Yes.
That's the best description. Biscuit equals scone crumpety.
Yep.
Sounds like the name of a really weird law firm.
Scone crumpety.
Welcome to Scone Crumpety.
the ambulance chasers of the highest order.
Have you ever rented a video that wasn't quite right?
You know what advice I got today? Okay, so I went to a wealthier part of miscellaneous city that we live in.
Scotty Crumpety Town?
Yes,
Yeah.
Scotty Crumpety Town. And we live in a fringe suburb of Sydney. And Sydney is one of the most... Oh, sorry. Miscellaneous City is one of the most overtold...
That'll do it. No one will know.
No one will know. That was slick. Is one of the most overtold...
To be fair, if you said it's one of the most overtold cities on the planet,
Yeah.
they'd guess Sydney.
Yes. So he's like, I'm waiting for someone out your way to do a class action lawsuit because technically you're paying to go 110 kilometers on those areas and you might be doing 5 kilometers for most of it. So you're not getting what you paid for. That's a
lawsuit.
And I'm like, I'm tempted.
Genius. So we then got to proof the dough.
Yes.
Now, when we got to proof the dough, Camilla became worried about her spatial recognition because they're like, wait till the dough increases by 1/3. And she's like, I just don't have the spatial recognition for that.
No. And now I'm going to bring up a joke that my mum used to tell, and I will flag that this is very not safe for work, and that's why we flag that. Apparently, as women or anyone who deals with people with penises, we have a very poor understanding of what constitutes 7 inches.
Oh, God. Of course.
Yes, that was a nice little joke my mum used to rustle up.
Okay.
She'd say it more succinctly and stuff.
Yes.
Everyone wants a succinct penis joke.
Everyone wants to sing 7 inches. Anyway. They then say to take the orange and put it on its side and cut it into rounds. At which point Ranier goes, it's an orange. It doesn't have a side. It's a circle. There were a lot of really puzzling math statements in this bake.
Yep.
Far more than there needed to be.
The 2x...
Well, we'll get to that because now...
4x2 triangle?
Before we get to the triangles, Kathy's solution to the glacé cherries was just stab them. Fair.
Yeah, that's what my mum used to do, and you actually put under it, you make the pineapple boats, and then you literally had to stab the glacé cherries.
Not the bloody pineapple boats.
What, they're fabulous, and I'm going to make them for Christmas this year.
You keep threatening to do that.
It's going to happen.
So, Candace, the math major, was confused by 4x6 triangles. And, wasn't just the only one. Like, Heather
She
said...
obviously missed that shoot that day. Like, that lecture, she's like, fuck
Heather
that.
said... Well, I think it was Heather who said...
There's a sale at Tim Hortons.
I think it was Heather who said...
I'm going to get cheap donut holes.
I think it was...
I'm a starving student. These donut holes will keep me going all year.
I think it was Heather who was the first one who said that it's 4x6, but that confuses me because triangles have 3 sides. And I'm like... Yeah, but if it's a 4x6, and then the other two, it's an isosceles. Oh, now I'm digging my maths out. Anyway,
who cares? It's maths. What's it ever done for us?
And if the maths major can't work it out, who the hell? What are we trying to do?
I feel like the People's Front of Judea. What have the Romans ever done for us?
Look, we'll get back to Nazareth the D&D campaign a little bit later. All right.
Okay.
The Nazareth campaign. So, Andrew at this point in time, unfortunately, realises... I'm trying to work out what happened with his. I think what happened was he got so focused on... Because Anne was over at his bench when he was trying to do the cookie strips. Mm-hmm. And he got them wrong. And I think he got so focused on getting those right that he just lost track. That's what I think happened. Because then when he went to put it... he was so far behind everyone else. And he just looked... He just looked at one point and goes, I'm just going to bake it. And, he had to.
No, I know what happened. He found the olive pitter. And he got distracted.
I love the idea that
olives.
I love the idea that somewhere out the back of the pavilion, there's just a fuck ton of olives.
Well, they also had to glacé some cherries. I'm just wondering if they had to pit some cherries too. Like, they were just pitting whatever they could get their hands on.
They didn't have to.
Yeah,
but they had access.
Yeah, yeah.
And they thought, why not? It just makes sense.
Will it pit? They started their own little...
Will it pit? Will it pit?
Flour? Will it pit?
So then we all had the...
Alan's hat? Will it pit?
So then we had the baking going on, and Camilla was like, the urge to check is very strong. Meanwhile, Niv had a completely different way of dealing with this.
I am here for raking your bakes. it's going to be added to, I think, the Listen to Your Bakes podcast, the Singing to Your Bakes, the Reiki-ing Your Bakes. Now, Niv, I'm not too sure what level Reiki you've been attuned to, but whatever it is, I think you need to work on evening out that energy distribution, because clearly
one side got all the Reiki.
Got all the Reiki.
Now Sydney was at least comforted by the idea. She went, well, I can smell bread. That's a good thing. Which is all you can ask for at this point in time.
It's not a good thing if you're somewhere that should be no bread.
No,
exactly. You're smelling bread. You're like...
Andrews, unfortunately, when he pulled it out of the oven, completely collapsed, and he understated this by just saying, it's not good at all. And then they finished, and Rania looked at the camera and just said, you know what? This tent really humbles you. Especially these sorts of bakes. So, the judging. Kathy.
Yes.
Nice colour on the bake. The pattern, however, wasn't correct. The texture was nice, and the zest was well balanced.
Yes.
Camilla, the pattern was a lot closer. It was a lighter bread and great texture. Sydney's was uniform but restrained, but very good flavour. Heather, clean work, beautiful colour. However, it wasn't kneaded properly, and they said they could tell that in the construction of the bread.
Yeah, you need your bread.
Andrew, they understated it by just saying that it wasn't baked long enough.
What gave you that impression?
They did say, however, that the fruit was good, but that it looked like it had just been thrown at it while they were trying to put it in the oven.
Look, he didn't have any bacon to quickly grab and throw at it.
Yeah,
I do feel like with Andrews, you could just like grab it, wrap it up, like just all the internal ingredients, just reconstitute into another shape and just cook it for funsies.
I just feel...
And there'd be like a fruit loaf.
He could have just adapted and made a fruit. Look, again, Antonio here wants, panettone versus babka.
They're the same thing, apparently. Panettone is just Italian babka.
So, look, with the uniform shape, citrus looked good, but it was very thick. The dough was unfortunately a bit crumbly as well. So then we move on to Rania. The alternating pattern was there, but no colour. And there was a raw dough layer. Like just a layer in there.
Should have Reiki'd his bake.
Candace, the thickness on the orange was quite good.
She found the sides, obviously.
The dough was kneaded well, but it was underbaked. And Niv, well, one side was really good, but it was crumbly, but the orange was really good. So we went from last to first. Andrew, Rania, Niv, Candace, Sydney, Kathy, Heather, and Camilla. Which takes us into the Festival of the Buns.
Sure, I attended that last Mardi Gras in Sydney.
That's a different festival of the buns.
Okay.
Love. That's a very,
very
different festival of the buns.
Okay, I was excited. I did not know that there is like a festival of buns with bun towers. Like, how fucking awesome is this? Like, I do love a good pork bun, like barbecue pork bun. Oh my God. Okay, we're doing this. We're going to Hong Kong.
So, the showstopper... I love the way they describe these towers and how tall they are, and then when yours only has to be 24 buns. 2 fillings, 4 hours.
Look, I think they might have, tried to convince the Film Institute.
And they went, no, we can't actually build a structure on grounds that tall. So... This is where we got the close up of the completely manicured Robin Hood bag with a scoop of flour coming out of it. Now Kyla pointed out
and just off in the corner is like Pierre, the Robin Hood dresser. Just, he's just 1 moment, please. Just irons out a crease and goes, okay, now you're right.
We're almost ready. Almost ready.
Can you just fold your hand on your hip a little bit here? Scoop from this angle.
Scoop.
Perfectly design this. So if you scoop from this angle, you'll catch the light perfectly.
Now, Kyla pointed out the filling needed to be good, but the bun also had to be well baked. Bruno talked about merging ambition with execution, which so far has felt like a bit of a theme of the series. So this series has felt a lot like, as they said, there's a lot of ambition and it's just been execution's not quite been there so far. And so that kind of felt like Bruno sending a message to everyone going, got a really good idea, do it.
Yeah, but you also have to realise we're a bit discombobulated because it's week 2 and it's bread week. Bread week's usually but week 3, isn't it?
It has been. They have flipped it around from time to time between biscuit week and bread, or cookie week and bread week.
Yeah.
I like bread week in week 3. I know that it's not always consistently in week 3. I like the idea of cake, biscuit, bread.
Yes.
Or cake cookie bread if you're Canadian. Because a whole week dedicated to biscuits, scone crumpets.
Scone crumpets. Junior the Third.
Yeah. Scone crumpet Junior the Third.
Sebastian Scone crumpets Junior the Third.
He's the DM for Nazareth for the campaign. Anyway, so Sydney said that she was moving slow and steady today, at which point she dropped a pan, looked at the camera and said, "Steady as Ev."
It's nice.
We love you, Sydney.
Yeah.
You're amazing.
I didn't know that they said Ev over there. Like, that's...
Steady as Ev.
Yeah. It's almost an Australianism, isn't it?
Really close.
Evs.
I really love that, this whole steady as Ev. So Heather was starting with a Winnipeg rye.
Yeah.
Niv was starting with an enriched dough. And then we cut to Kathy. And Kathy was making pierogies.
Yes. I like to think that Niv's yeast are feeling all really, like, good and positively energized after she's rakied making things.
Followed by
death raining down on them. Anyway.
Rain down.
Yeah.
So
It's hot in here, don't you think?
We cut to Kathy making pierogies. Now,
Yeah.
Kyla at this point was talking about her mum made pierogies as well, and that her mum made the best pierogies. So this was going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Poor Kathy. Now, I say poor Kathy.
No pressure.
I say poor Kathy.
Yeah.
But, Kathy. Kathy. Pierogies were only one of your two buns.
What's the other? Oh, God. Okay, here we go.
Poppy,
Yeah.
seed, matcha. Now, I'm going to suggest that production was on my side.
Just self-censored.
And the reason I'm going to say production is on my side is they didn't use the word matcha. They never talked about it. They never really demonstrated them. They barely showed them. When we get to the judging,
Yes.
they never even mentioned the matcha. They only showed the pierogies.
Yeah, because I assume once you show matcha in Canada and then the little man in Australia flips his lid, they get like a blizzard in Canada that just...
I like the idea that
You're like the butterfly that causes the Amazon to
I
blow
like
up.
the idea that on CBC morning news tomorrow morning, they're going to be, well, he's at it again, folks. Somebody used that ingredient and he's ranting.
Yes, and we're coming into winter, and boy, it's going to be chilly. A frost will descend and freeze your bakes. And
So-
freeze your moose steaks.
So, like, was making a lychee Matarozzi, which is the Italian cream cakes.
Yeah.
And a mango and duck was his second bun.
Nice.
I like that.
Look, in Australia, like, we do a lot of mango and duck over here. Like, more often than not, you'll find that in, like, like modern Australian restaurants.
Mango or pear.
Yeah, something of that nature paired with your duck. And I think it's just because we have mangoes growing here. Like, it's just a very easy to get ingredient in summer. And ducks, apparently, as well. So, you know, maybe for the Canadians, not so much. I mean, we've seen the quality of the mangoes that they have to get the fruit.
They've got
pirate
some
to bring
terrible,
over.
yeah, like the last ones they had the other year were, like, lychee were terrible. And we said that openly on the show. They were horrible mangoes. Anyway, so Candace, veggie stuffed naan, they looked incredible.
Yum.
And the other ones were samosas. We love a samosa.
Yeah.
Not too fond of the fact that Big P got into those, though, Candace, just got to say.
Look, I just have to
They
question...
ruin it.
Like, I really feel, okay, so the British obviously stole a lot of spices and stuff from
Was the
India
trade-off?
and China and stuff. And then what do? Pay them in peas? And like, we're going to do this. We'll put it in a samosa. Put it in a fried rice.
It's like when they put peas in fried rice. Like, peas are not traditional in Chinese fried rice. They didn't have the British garden pea.
No.
Sugar snap pea, okay, fine. But not the British garden pea, anyway.
Did the British steal the peas from someone? That's what I'm going to
Probably,
to
they're the British. They stole everything.
Where are
Whole countries.
peas native to?
The British stole whole countries. We're talking to two of them right now.
You know how people say, if I get a time machine, I would stop the Mediterranean Neolithic period, Middle East. Okay, so this is probably where the conflict in the Middle East began. I reckon, right, most people are like, oh, if I get a time machine, I'm going to go back and kill Hitler, or I'm going to, invest in Apple and Google and whatever.
Yep.
I'm like, no, we'll go back and deliberately inhibit the evolution of
The
peas.
pea, exactly.
Like,
Good
not
idea.
all legumes. Chickpeas, not a problem.
No, well, then most of the legumes live, but not those ones.
No.
Anyway, so
They shall never be domesticated.
Camilla. So Camilla's first one was a sesame paste,
Yes.
and then the second one was a Chinese barbecue pork. Right up your alley. Yep. So now this is what they also reiterated, the fact that Camilla, in her spare time, I think maybe for a job, does pottery.
Yes.
Now, my first thought was, of course, this is a show that is a format that is owned by Love Productions.
Oh, yeah.
And Love Productions' other big success story is the Great Pottery Throwdown. So if they ever do the Canadian Pottery Throwdown,
Done.
contestant number 1,
Yeah.
Camilla, or maybe the host. Now, Loke was trying to move between...
She's just got to wear overalls and cry.
We can't all be Keith. We can't all be Keith.
Yeah, but unless your pottery is moving...
I'm sorry, this toilet is just amazing. That was my favourite week ever on British Pottery Throwdown, is Keith crying over toilets.
And look, we might sound really negative about
We
it.
love Keith. He's amazing.
It's actually a very beautiful show, and if you're looking for something else to watch...
We talk about Bake Off being the nicest show on television. Pottery Throwdown is legitimately the nicest show on television.
Yeah.
Not so much season 1, because I didn't like that judge.
No.
But go to like season 3, and the judges get really nice and Keith's amazing. I love Keith.
Just do it.
Keith's wonderful. Anyway, moving on. We're not paid by Love Productions.
Right along.
Yeah, we're not paid by Love Productions.
However, if you want us to edit...
Yeah, Love Productions. Anyway, now Love was trying to move between savoury and sweet at the same time. Meanwhile, we cut to Andrew, who's making sambal. So we did spicy steamed chicken buns. Plus he did bolo bao. But the sambal seemed to be the star of the show. He said his father loved the Indonesian cuisine.
Yeah.
And put sambal on everything.
But when he said bolo bao,
Yeah.
all I can think of, right, so in Australia we have bowls clubs, and I don't
The bolo.
and when you go to a bowls club, think of a small kind of, so lawn bowls are like your,
They have them overseas, yeah.
Okay,
It's the equivalency of curling, but on grass.
Yeah.
We talked about it last week.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we've got a nice continuation here. And they'll have usually like a cheap little kind of pub restaurant next to it, or with it, right? Where you can get a cheap feed. And I'm now thinking bolo bao is someone had sambal somewhere, and they went, look, I don't actually have chilies, so I'm just going to use capsicum, because they look like chilies, and it's that old kind of like substitution of ingredients. I don't actually have this Sam stuff.
It's like my favorite. It's like my favorite Reddit page, which is called "I Didn't Have the Eggs," which, if you've never been, it's basically people who have given reviews on recipes where they've substituted things, and they're not good substitutions, and then they criticise the dish for not quite working. So we then cut to everyone admiring the smell of Loke's duck, because like, what's that smell? It's like my hoisin and ginger duck.
I'd just be whipping up some little pancakes to whack them on.
Oh yeah.
Go out. I'd go forage some shallots, or what do they call them over there? Spring onions.
Yep.
No.
You know what they could add to the dish?
What?
Olives. There's a ton out the back. And people say
they're going to make a tapenade out of those.
And people say we've got too many in-jokes. Anyway.
I know.
So Heather was making a honey dill chicken rye.
Yes.
And then a mushroom bun as well. Now this is where Heather talked about the idea of her family's ideal time is just being hippie forest people.
just hanging out in the forest. Now I'm imagining that, you know, their normal kind of weekday wear is the camo, like, but not just like the kind of hunter camo that you see the Americans wear.
No.
I'm talking about like full, like the net things. One of the kids is like disguise themselves to be a full like waterfall.
It's Monday, you know what that means? Build a shelter.
Hide from zombies. Okay, kids, we're going to learn to disguise our scent. What are you going to roll in? I found some manure. Great job there. What have you found? I found some old sardines. Like, it's just, I've just disguised myself as a bison.
I'm not gonna. You fail.
Yes.
You are out. So Niv.
What do we know? Bisons have brains. What do zombies want to eat? Brains.
So Niv made monkey-shaped buns with coconut.
Yes.
And then her version of the Italian cream buns, which was stuffed with caramel. Now, as Anne comes over, her caramel separates. And Anne's like, do we have time to remake that? And Niv's like, oh, absolutely not. Have you seen my timetable?
Yes. It's like a nice little banoffee flavour, but her timetable, holy shit.
Oh.
Like, it was artistic, it was chaos.
I know someone from Bake Off who would appreciate that so much.
Fuck yeah, like...
Vincent would love that.
Look, I feel like it's going to be a Bake Off TED Talk one day. Like, organise your bakes. Arrange your bakes.
You need to talk to Vince.
Project manage your bakes.
You need to talk to Vince because nobody's got that down to the last second like Vince. Then Niv talked about having to give birth to little monkey babies.
Ooh.
And then Rainier, who was making the Lebanese buns and the Maharama buns, which is like the sister of hummus.
Yeah, they looked... I haven't had that before. I'd really like to try it.
The Maharama looked really good.
I feel like my sister's in-laws have been holding out on us all this time.
Probably.
I mean, they make great kibbeh, they make great tabbouleh.
Maybe they're a bit worried about being headbutted by horses.
It's just, they don't go near Michelle's horse.
Not anymore.
She doesn't take it to their picnic.
It's a headbutting machine. Anyway, then most of them were baking their buns except for Andrew, who was steaming, and Sydney was deep frying. And she's like, I don't know why I'm deep frying. I've not done this. I don't like doing this. I've never done this before. Mm-hmm. Now, they were PEI themed, so she continued the SBU, the Sydney Baked Universe.
Which now has little PEI cows.
And
oysters.
PEI oysters.
Oh, and they like recreate the walrus and the carpenter.
They really do. Little oysters. Little oysters. Well, they weren't eating everyone. That's kind of the problem. But maybe the oysters just need to be rolled in like salt.
Yes. Oh my God.
The walrus wouldn't have touched them.
Cows as buns. If you know the cows
as buns.
If you know the cows with guns.
So the cow ones were blackberry brioche and the oyster ones were mushroom buns. And then before we get to the judging, the last sort of moment to really hit upon was Luke, who had the tree of abundance. At which point I thought Anne was going to lose her mind.
Yes, it was the greatest pun
now,
ever
before we get to the judging as well, we just have to say, because we haven't acknowledged it on the episode,
Alan doing his bun work.
Well, that was good, but I'm also going to say the outfits.
Anne, oh my God, like Alan's shirt, gorgeous, right?
I loved Alan's shirt because of the sudden change in tone. Amazing.
It was like a Bob Ross painting before he starts putting the
trees
trees over it. Yeah. And making happy little mistakes. Anne was just like a unicorn, wasn't she? Like that braid. The
braid was incredible.
The bisexual braid, because it was purple, pink, and blue.
The braid was amazing.
Yeah.
Stunning.
Gorge.
So the judging.
All gorge. Yes.
Camilla. So catches attention because of the detail.
Yes.
The cheese bread with the pork was tasty and moist. The black sesame was a good contrast.
That looks really good.
Yeah, and they said it was melty and really good flavour.
Yeah, I now want to try the Colombian bread. Yep. And like when Bruno said, oh, this is good texture, you could see that. Oh.
So Sydney, they said it really evoked PEI. If you've ever been there, it's just cows and oysters. The brioche was fun.
Wendy's like, hey!
Yeah. The brioche was fun and clever. The dough was good, but lacking filling.
Anne of Green Gables is like, hey!
They said as well that the oil was high, so the oyster ones were a bit dry, and the salt took away from the internal flavour. Kyla really liked the internal flavour, but just, they said, the oil took away from that. Renier, they said, beautiful to see the colour. The turmeric buns were gorgeous. The filling was good, and the pink one was really good with the pomegranate inside it. Which they didn't really mention the pomegranate until the judging. I'm like, well, that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Heather.
Oh, no, he did. Remember how he said he made the dip, and it doesn't usually have pomegranate, but he added it to have that little extra tang in it.
Too, my bad. Then Heather. They said it showed a distinct personality. The filling inside the bees was good, but needed salt. And the creamy mushroom needed more rosemary.
But she didn't want to assault the bees.
Not the bees.
Oh, no, not the bees. Oh, she should have made a little Nicolas Cage.
I hope she did, and they just didn't air it. Candace. Very creative display. Beef samosa filling was good. They said the peas give it a pop. Lies. They said that the vegetable garlic...
A pop of evil.
The vegetable garlic naan was tore very well, was very well baked, and was absolutely delicious.
Yum.
Niv, they said the monkeys all showed personality. The coconut was really good, but it was dense. They said that the banana ones needed a little bit more baking, and the caramel, though, was a really good detail at the end of the banana.
Yeah.
Andrew, they said they were elegant. The sambal, the chicken ones with the sambal had really good filling. They needed more filling. Then they didn't mention his second one at all, so we don't know how that went.
You know why? It was probably matcha, yuzu, and peas. With Saskatoon berry. That's what it was. It was a Saskatoon berry filling. They're like, oh no, if we mention both matcha and Saskatoon berry in the same show, you know what's going to happen? Then, like fuck Mr. Freeze. Like,
So then...
the whole of Canada is wiped out.
So then there's Loke. They said it looked really good. The mango buns were splitting. They needed less filling because he put too much in there. Good combo with the duck and mango. And the lychee mousse ones were pillowy with good flavour, and he absolutely nailed them. Yeah. And then Kathy, they said they were clean and consistent. The pierogi was well filled. And Kyla got really emotional because she's like, they taste exactly like her mother's.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Now
I have a challenge. Make a caramel slice like my mum used to make. Do that. Make me cry. I miss a caramel slice. I love my mum and I miss her, but...
Caramel slice.
Caramel slice, people.
So, no mention of the matcha, as I said before.
I'm so going to be haunted by my mum tonight.
Oh, God. She should sing a day. Anyway.
Oh, God.
So, the star baker was Camilla, which was perfectly fair.
Yeah.
Going home was interesting, this one, because I genuinely couldn't pick where they were going to go with it.
Yeah, I think it was a very tough decision.
So, yeah, it was real... I
wouldn't have wanted to be in the judge's shoes.
No,
yeah.
I can see why it was Sydney, but it must have been
very
close.
Yeah. I think they possibly took last week's bakes into account
I
as
also,
well, but even then, that's...
I think I would have liked... Yeah. The only thing I would have liked to be a bit different is I would have liked them to have given a sentence on Andrew's second buns. Because he was the other one who was in a bit of danger.
Yeah.
And they did say that the filling and the chicken ones was good with the sambal, but they said that there was almost no filling in them.
Yeah.
So I just wanted them to say, for example, the second buns are good.
Yeah.
Right, just so you go, okay,
that makes it.
But they didn't even show the second buns. That was my only thing. But look, nothing abhorrent. And poor Sydney, I felt really bad for Sydney. You could see how hard it was for her, obviously.
Yeah, I just wanted to go and cuddle her and go, it's okay.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to have a bit of a chat about the Sydney
go home to your mum, Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke.
Well, at some point, hopefully, soon we'll be able to have a bit of a chat about the Sydney Baked Universe in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
So
find out the other characters we would have got to know.
Exactly. So that's your bread week for this week.
Yes.
So thank you everyone for joining us. Again, if you listen, please reshare the episodes. It really does help us out when you do that.
Yeah.
We really appreciate everyone who's shown some support, especially the bakers. Thanks guys for resharing. Really appreciate all of you. Love that this little pokey little podcast from the other side of the world gets listened to in Canada. We really appreciate it. It's the highlight of our week. Until next time, I'm still Chris.
And I'm still Kristie.
And we'll catch you all later.
Great Pea.